the Great Thousand Worlds, part of the Celestial Realm, Central Heaven Realm. Among the top 10 supercontinents of the Great Thousand Worlds is the Central Heaven Continent. Spanning hundreds of millions of miles, this vast land is home to the Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace, one of the 5 dominant forces. Situated within the Myriad Manifestations domain, the palace stands resilient thanks to the surrounding circular mountain range, spanning tens of millions of miles in diameter and forming a natural barrier. This formidable landscape has played a critical role in preserving the palace's unshaken presence for tens of thousands of years. Within the Myriad Manifestations domain lies a vast lake, the Grand Myriad Heavenly Lake. Stretching over hundreds of thousands of miles, its sheer scale makes it appear boundless even from thousands of feet in the air, resembling a sea. Yet, compared to the Central Heaven Continent, it is but a lake. The lake is one of the richest areas of heaven and earth spiritual energy within the domain, traditionally reserved as a place of recuperation for the palace master. However, it now serves a different purpose, having been entrusted to one individual, a man seated serenely atop a massive drifting lotus leaf in the middle of the expansive lake. Xiao. A sudden whooshing sound cut through the air. A shadowy figure approached with an almost ethereal swiftness, covering thousands of miles in mere breaths. The figure gracefully landed on the same lotus leaf where Xiao sat. Cai Lin. How is your recovery? Cai Lin inquired, her gaze fixed on Xiao. 10 days prior, Xiao had suffered severe injuries during a battle with Yin Yao of the ancient heaven-reaching Python clan. The Flame Emperor body, the pinnacle of his cultivation, had been incinerated by the spirit of the heavenly flame. Comparable to his struggles during the battle of the twin emperors on the continent of Doqi, the destruction of the Flame Emperor body had inflicted a grievous blow. Back on the continent of Doqi, it took Xiao years to reconstruct his Do-Di body, hindered by the scarcity of heaven and earth energy. Now, within the Great Thousand Worlds, where spiritual energy was abundant, the time required for recovery remained uncertain. The spiritual energy of this world surpasses the continent of Doqi by an immeasurable degree, Xiao said. But to restore my emperor body and full strength, it may still take several months. This Grand Myriad Heavenly Lake, composed entirely of pure spiritual energy, has helped me regain about 30% of my power. Even so, Xiao, with just 30% of his strength, was far more formidable than when he was at the pinnacle of the 9th grade supreme stage. By the way, I heard He Yuanyan left you a jade slip, Xiao said, as if remembering something. Yes, I looked through its contents, Cai Lin replied. In it, He Yuanyan revealed some details about the ancient heaven-reaching Python clan. It appears the 9-colored heaven-swallowing python was a bloodline offshoot left in a lower dimension by the clan. He suggested that if I have the opportunity, I should visit the clan, as I might obtain an even more powerful bloodline inheritance there. That sounds promising. When the time comes, I'll take you to the ancient heaven-reaching Python clan, Xiao said. Oh, right. Cai Lin suddenly remembered something, extending a slender hand towards Xiao. A black jade slip rested in her palm. This was entrusted to me by Elder Xia Tianqing. He said it was specifically meant for you, given by the Grand Elder of the ancient heaven-reaching Python clan. Oh. Xiao took the jade slip, recalling from Cai Lin's earlier account that after he fell unconscious in the last battle, the Grand Elder of the ancient heaven-reaching Python clan and the Elder of Heavenly Punishment had arrived, promptly quelling the conflict. The Grand Elder mentioned that what's inside might be useful to you. Take a look, Cai Lin said. Xiao nodded, flipping the black jade slip into the air. With a flick of his finger, the jade slip unfolded midair, and his index finger pressed lightly against it. Ding! As Xiao finger touched the spatial jade slip, a black light emanated from it, enveloping him. The world spun around him, and when he regained his bearings, he found himself in a new realm. It was a boundless red world, its vastness extending beyond tens of billions of miles. Thousands of massive landmasses floated amidst the expanse, forming an awe-inspiring spectacle. The view before Xiao rapidly magnified as he arrived at a continent located in the center of this realm. Stretching out before him was a stunningly picturesque land, its surface occasionally flickering with flames rising from beneath the earth. To Xiao Yan's astonishment, these flames were no less potent than some of the heavenly flames within him. What's this? Suddenly, a flickering blue flame caught Xiao Yan's attention. It was a flame as vast as the sea, radiating an aura he found intimately familiar. In no time, he recognized it. Sea Heart Flame. The flame that surged from the ground was none other than the Sea Heart Flame, ranked 14th on the Heavenly Flames ranking of the continent of Doqi. But how could this flame appear here? As Xiao Yan stared in surprise at the unexpected appearance of the Sea Heart Flame, a white-gray flame suddenly surged behind him. Turning, he exclaimed in shock, "Fallen Heart Flame!" Boom, boom, boom. Flames continued to erupt across the land, one after another, many of which were all too familiar to Xiao Yan. Among them were over 20 heavenly flames listed on the Heavenly Flames ranking, and even 4 flames he had acquired in the Great Thousand Worlds. This realm held thousands of flames, each distinct, yet they were all part of the 100 million flames ranking. Xiao Yan couldn't help but wonder if this continent was a place specifically designed to nurture flames. Just then, Xiao Yan's expression changed sharply as he sensed an overwhelmingly terrifying aura suddenly invading his perception. Far off on the horizon, hundreds of thousands of miles away, a massive pillar of white flame shot into the sky. As the fiery column gradually dispersed, a lotus about 10 feet wide appeared at its center. Upon the lotus sat a figure cloaked in dark robes, his aged silhouette emanating a profound presence. As Xiao Yan focused his gaze, the features of the figure became clear, and a look of shock swept across his face. "Tuasha, Ancient Emperor." His startled cry echoed as he recognized the figure. Tuasha, Ancient Emperor, the fusion of 22 heavenly flames, whom he had encountered during his inheritance on the continent of Doqi. But the current Tuasha, Ancient Emperor, was far more powerful than the one Xiao Yan had previously seen. His aura was leagues beyond that of Wu Wanlong, the Grand Elder of the Western Heaven Palace. Tuasha, Ancient Emperor's presence dominated the heavens and the earth, subjugating all flames within this realm. He turned his gaze toward the distant horizon, where a colossal stone stele, tens of thousands of feet tall, stood. 3 large characters were clearly engraved upon it. Fire Spirit Clan. Buzz. Just as Xiao Yan was about to delve further into this flame-filled realm, the vision abruptly ceased. When he opened his eyes, he found himself gazing out over an endless expanse of water, the grand Myriad heavenly lake. Exiting the imagery stored within the jade slip, Xiao Yan sighed softly. However, the scene of countless flames bowing before a single figure lingered vividly in his mind, leaving him deeply shaken. What was in there? Cai Lin asked from behind him. "Tuasha, Ancient Emperor," Xiao Yan replied. "What? Tuasha, Ancient Emperor?" Cai Lin's exclamation was filled with astonishment. She hadn't expected this long-lost name from the continent of Doqi to resurface through an ancient clan. "When I first arrived in the Great Thousand Worlds, a strong cultivator told me about the imperial flame from 10,000 years ago. Discontent with the constraints of the continent of Doqi, it had ventured into the Great Thousand Worlds, continuing to devour flames and eventually ascending to 3rd place on the 100 million flames ranking. However, it was ultimately subdued by a superclan known as the Fire Spirit Clan," Xiao Yan explained. "Are you planning to visit the Fire Spirit Clan?" Cai Lin asked. "I will," Xiao Yan smiled. "But a place like that isn't somewhere I can tread with my current strength, which is why I will keep growing stronger." Hearing this, Cai Lin also smiled. The Xiao Yan before her now was one she truly admired. "Still, I have no idea where Xun'er and the others are," Xiao Yan suddenly mused, remembering that he had arrived in the Great Thousand Worlds with 4 companions, yet only Cai Lin had been reunited with him so far. "The Great Thousand Worlds is vast beyond measure," Cai Lin said. "But as long as they're safe, I believe we'll reunite one day." Before he left, "Senior Wu Wanlong left me a jade slip," Xiao Yan said. "Since we are all from the lower dimension and now face the so-called extraterritorial evil clan, it's natural to establish some connections," Cai Lin said. When I was listed as an elder in the Western Heaven Palace, I also got you a position," Xiao Yin chuckled. Hearing this, Cai Lin glanced at Xiao Yin and then asked, "When do we set off? Shouldn't we wait until your emperor body has fully recovered?" "That won't be necessary. Right now, while I may not be invincible in the Great Thousand Worlds, as long as I don't encounter some of those old monsters from the primordial clans, I'm confident I can protect myself," Xiao Yin said as he stood up. "Are we leaving now?" Cai Lin asked as she saw Xiao Yin rise. "Yes, it's time to say goodbye to this place." A calm voice came from Xiao Yin as he took Cai Lin's hand. In the next moment, their figures soared into the air, heading beyond the Grand Myriad Heavenly Lake, flying toward the heart of the Grand Myriad Heavenly Domain, Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace. Although the Grand Myriad Heavenly Lake was nearly 1,000,000 miles from the Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace, for the current Xiao Yin, crossing such a distance took only a few minutes. Upon arriving at the Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace, Xiao Yin met Xia Tianqing. After a brief conversation lasting 10 or so minutes, he prepared to depart. Outside the Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace, on a massive white plaza, a teleportation spirit array had been constructed at some unknown point. Xiao Yin and Cai Lin stood before it, while Xia Tianqing watched them from a short distance. The Great Thousand Worlds is vast beyond measure, but danger always accompanies its magnificence. "Xiao Yin, my friend, you must take care," Xia Tianqing said. "Thank you for your concern, Palace Master Xia. Perhaps in the near future, I will visit the Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace again," Xiao Yin replied, cupping his hands in respect. "In that case, remember that the gates of the Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace will always be open to you. Whenever you wish to return, you and your companion will be our honored guests," Xia Tianqing said with a smile. She then raised her slender jade-like hand and pointed at the teleportation spirit array behind Xiao Yin. With a swish, a beam of azure light shot out from Xia Tianqing's fingertip, entering the teleportation spirit array, which began to emit a radiant glow. "The array has reached its optimal state for teleportation. You may proceed." Seeing the light radiating from behind, Xiao Yin smiled. He and Cai Lin stepped into the array, sharing a smile with Xia Tianqing in the distance. The space within the teleportation spirit array began to distort. This teleportation spirit array will take you to a continent outside the heavenly realm. "Be cautious," Xia Tianqing reminded them. With a hum, dazzling light enveloped Xiao Yin and Cai Lin, and their figures vanished into the heavens and earth. The light faded, leaving the massive plaza as it had been before. Watching Xiao Yin and Cai Lin depart, Xia Tianqing smiled, then turned and walked back toward the Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace. "I truly wonder how far he'll have progressed the next time we meet." Northern Great Realm. This realm lay in the northern reaches of the Great Thousand Worlds, a vast super realm spanning tens of billions of miles. Endless seas of ice and water stretched across it, dotted with tens of thousands of continents of varying sizes. However, the current events were not unfolding in the northern Great Realm, but in a boundless ocean several billion miles away. Adjacent to the northern Great Realm, this neighboring region was scattered with thousands of drifting continents, their positions constantly shifting due to the power of oceanic tides. Thus, it was known by another name, Wandering Realm. Within a specific part of the Wandering Realm, two continents were relatively close to each other. These two landmasses, notable even among the countless continents of the Wandering Realm, were known in the Great Thousand Worlds as the Four Profound Continents and the Heaven Desolate Continent. At this moment, however, the commotion seemed to be concentrated on the Four Profound Continents. In the eastern region of the Four Profound Continents lay a massive mountain range spanning hundreds of thousands of miles. This place had become the most bustling spot on the continent. The air was filled with the sound of countless figures breaking through the void, converging on this mountain range. In the midair above the mountain range, familiar figures could be seen. Nearly 1,000 individuals from the lower dimension of Wu Yuan dimension. Among them were the Lord of Life and Death, the Dark Lord, the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness, Ling Qingzhu, Lin Diao, Lin Yin, and others. Ahead of them, atop one of the mountain peaks, numerous other figures had gathered. Leading this group were 3 middle-aged men and 2 elders, all exuding an aura that indicated they had reached the supreme stage. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that the terrain of this mountain range closely resembled a location in the eastern mystery region of the Wu Yuan dimension, the Dao Sect. Having just arrived at the four profound continents, the Lord of Life and Death and his companions naturally sought a foothold on this new land. Some even decided to settle here. However, what seemed easy in theory proved to be riddled with challenges in practice. With an army of hundreds of billions advancing onto this continent, they were immediately met with hostility from the various sects and factions of the four profound continents. Rather than outright rejection, however, the response was more akin to opportunistic extortion. The mountain range they occupied was unclaimed territory. Yet, the Wu Yuan sect, the dominant power on this continent, leveraged its hegemonic status to exploit the newcomers from the Wu Yuan dimension. They demanded an annual tribute of 100,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid for access to the region. This exorbitant demand shocked the entire continent. After all, the mountain range spanned merely hundreds of thousands of miles, and even the entire four profound continents combined could only generate a little over 100,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid annually. The Wu Yuan sect's behavior was essentially outright plundering. What shocked everyone even more was the response from the Wu Yuan dimension newcomers. Instead of protesting, they immediately agreed to the demand and even added an extra 100,000 drops, offering a total of 200,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid. This staggering amount left everyone in awe. A group of people who had just arrived from a lower dimension, whose strongest members were only at the first-grade supreme level, somehow possessed such a massive quantity of supreme spiritual liquid. The shockwaves caused by this revelation quickly led to speculation. Many guessed that this vast wealth of supreme spiritual liquid might have come from a heavenly supreme powerhouse who had once had contact with this dimension. For a typical continent, amassing 200,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid might take years, but for a heavenly supreme, it would be no more than a casual gesture. Some even speculated that the newcomer's ability to produce 200,000 drops in one go must be closely tied to that heavenly supreme powerhouse. Yet, despite the double payment, tensions had risen, and the newcomers now stood in opposition to the Wu Yuan sect and other major forces. The reason for this standoff lay in a notification the Wu Yuan sect sent a few days after receiving the 200,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid. The sect revised its terms, demanding that instead of an annual payment of 100,000 drops, the newcomers pay 900,000 drops in a single installment to cover 10 years of peace. On the surface, this seemed somewhat reasonable. After all, 100,000 drops annually would amount to 1 million drops over 10 years, so paying in advance would save the hassle of yearly tributes. However, upon closer examination, the Wu Yuan sect's cunning strategy became clear. They understood that the newcomers from the lower dimension were highly talented. If they could reach the supreme stage despite the limitations of their home dimension, their potential in the Great Thousand Worlds was unimaginable. The Wu Yuan sect also knew that the heavenly supreme of the Great Thousand Alliance had provided these newcomers with abundant supreme spiritual liquid. Currently, the newcomers were willing to pay 100,000 drops annually, but this was merely a stalling tactic. With their talent and the resources at their disposal, they could achieve significant breakthroughs in a few years, potentially surpassing the Wu Yuan sect. At that point, would they still need to pay any tribute? To prevent the situation from slipping out of control, the Wu Yuan sect devised this scheme to extract more supreme spiritual liquid. By doing so, they could not only bolster their own strength but also slow the progress of the newcomers. Without sufficient resources, even the most talented individuals would face a steep uphill battle to advance. This strategy was undeniably shrewd. In the vast skies spanning thousands of feet, the Lord of Life and Death gazed sharply at the powerful figures of the Wu Yuan sect and their affiliated forces hovering not far ahead. Among them were 8 formidable experts who had reached the supreme stage. The strongest among them was Zhang Tian, the sect master of the Wu Yuan sect, whose strength had ascended to the level of a 4th-grade supreme. On the other hand, on the side of the Lord of Life and Death, there were 7 supreme experts, including Qing Ji, Ling Qingzhu, and the recently summoned Thunder Lord and Flame Lord. However, apart from Ling Qingzhu, who had just broken through to the 2nd-grade supreme a few days ago, the others were merely 1st-grade supremes. Such a confrontation made it clear at a glance who held the upper hand. Initially, the three major lords, Qingji and Ling Qingzhu, had led the people from the Wu Yuan dimension, resettling hundreds of billions of them in a mountain range akin to that of the Dao sect. Although the area felt somewhat crowded, having a foothold was already considered fortunate. It had been about a week since their arrival on the four profound continents. After discussions among the three major lords and Qingji, they decided to establish a unified sect for the entire Wu Yuan dimension, naming it the Martial God Sect. This was undoubtedly the largest sect they had ever organized. Aside from the hundreds of billions of ordinary residents from the lower dimensions who became dependent inhabitants of the Martial God Sect, those who had reached or had the potential to reach the Nirvana stage of the Wu Yuan dimension, equivalent to the Divine Soul stage in this Great Thousand World, were classified as inner sect members of the Martial God Sect. Such individuals numbered roughly 1.5 million. These 1.5 million were divided into 9 great temples, each led by the 3 major lords, Qingji, Ling Qingzhu, and 3 other top experts. Those who had reached the life and death stage or higher, equivalent to the heaven merging stage or heaven transformation stage, became junior managers of the 9 great temples, with each temple hosting several hundred such experts. As for those who had attained the revolution stage, they could assume the rank of earth-tier elders within the 9 great temples. However, such individuals were fewer than 200 across all 9 temples combined. Meanwhile, several dozen reincarnation stage experts, who were considered the pinnacle in the Wu Yuan dimension, became heaven-tier elders with the freedom to move between the temples. Among these heaven-tier elders, Lin Diao and Lin Yan were prominent representatives. Ling Qingzhu, uninterested in managing the internal affairs of the Martial God Sect, was chosen as the Grand Elder of the sect due to her unmatched strength.